So we are going to be working with our wave motion picture. So you should have some waves that imply motion with repetition and the way the lines move. So you can see I have some larger waves, some crashing waves, and then some rippling waves here. You can also create motion in your sky. So remember, we looked at Hokusai's Great Wave for some examples of how waves move, and then we looked at Van Gogh's Starry Night for some examples of how the sky moves. Some of you might also choose to do a sunset. I chose to do a moon scene. Once you have your main picture drawn, you're tracing it with Sharpie, and you want to use some thick and thin lines so that you get some variation. It will help with the sense of movement, but it also creates that variety and interest. Once you have that done, you can look to see if there's anywhere else you want to add any lines or patterns. So for example, in this moon, I've started adding swirls to the moon just to create some more interest and variety. I actually come in here and add some more lines and interest to this if I want to create some movement even within the moon. And again, I can use thin or thick Sharpies depending on what I want it to look like. So here's just an example for you of how you could come in if you wanted to add more patterns, more lines, more movement to your picture. Right? So once you have that done everywhere you want, the next step you're going to do is to add color. So you have two choices for your color. You can do the watercolors or you can do the colored pencils. So I'm going to show you both. I'm going to show you the watercolors first. Now, if you don't have a large palette, you may want to mix some colors. Just make sure that you're mixing them on your paper or on the tray, not in the colors, or else yours are going to look like mine. See, I picked some that someone else had used and they didn't do a super great job of taking care of these paints. So luckily the colors I want are good, but like if I wanted to use yellow, I would kind of be out of luck. So if you're mixing paints, mix them on your paper or use this tray here so that your paints stay nice and clean, okay? Alright, so if I'm using the watercolors, what I want to do is use more or less water to get the colors to be lighter or darker. So for example, I'm going to get this blue-green here. Now blue-green is super easy to make, also known as turquoise or aqua. You can mix blue and green together if you don't have it and you want that color. But I'm going to start here, and you can see my paint is a little bit darker. It's still plenty watery, but it's kind of dark. So I'm going to start with that. And then as I move through it, I'm going to start using more water so that the color gets lighter. Okay, and I can do that all the way through. Now, if you're not sure how dark or light you want it, you want to start extra light, because you can always go in and add more paint and make the color darker, but it's a lot harder to lighten up the color if you get it too dark, especially once it's dry. So I prefer to start a little lighter, and then I can add more paint if I want it darker. Okay, but you can see that this wave is not just one solid value of watercolor. It's lighter or darker depending on how much water I've added in that section. Okay, so there's an example of that. You can also see I'm going to do another one, and what I'm going to do with this one is I am going to show you how you can mix two colors together. Okay, so if I want to paint this one, and let's just pretend that I feel like this color is too close to the color it's right beside and I want it to look different, I could come get my blue and I could add some blue to it here and mix that in with my color so that it looks more different from the first color. And these will look even better once they dry, because right now they're kind of wet, so it's hard to see what the colors will look like, but you guys have experience with this, so hopefully you'll be good to go. And now let's see, as I'm going along, I want to switch the color, and I want it to look more green. So I could get my green, and I can blend the two colors where they meet, and then slowly start painting with more green. So that's going to help me get some, again, some variety and some interest, and just make it look really cool. I can start getting darker green as I get away from the blue if I want to get some more value, or I can come in with more green next to the edge and make that darker. Okay, So that's using the watercolors. Another option for you is to use colored pencils, and we can get values blended, and we can get darks and lights in a very similar fashion. Alright, so if I want my colored pencils to be darker, I'm going to press harder to get the colors to be richer and deeper. Okay, and then if I want it to get lighter, I'm going to start pressing more softly, just like I do with my pencil when I'm shading in my sketchbook. Okay, and slowly I'm going to stop pressing as hard so that the color gets lighter. Okay, and just like I said with the watercolors, if I end up wanting something to be darker, I can come in and press harder to get it even darker. You can erase your colored pencil to make it lighter, but it's never going to go fully away. So again, you probably want to start lighter and work your way to darker as you go if you feel like it's not dark enough, because there's only so much of the pigment you're going to be able to get off your paper. Okay. So that's using the colored pencils. I can also blend with colored pencils. So let's say I want this wave to start out with blue. I can get the blue going, and then I can blend it into the purple just like I did the watercolors. Okay, so I'm going to start off with this dark color right here, pressing nice and hard, but as I get close to the point where I want to blend my color, I'm going to start pressing lighter and get the blue to be lighter. That's going to allow me to blend in the purple. So now I've got the purple, and I'm going to overlay that on top of the blue in the middle where they meet. Okay, and then I can slowly start going this way, and you'll notice it's just purple. So I've created a blend of the colors. Okay, now when you see this in person in class, it's going to be a little more obvious to see the colors than what you can see on the camera, but hopefully you're getting an idea of how I'm blending these two colors together. Alright, so there are the two ideas. You can do watercolors or you can do colored pencils. Now when you're done, the last step will be to add some details with the markers. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. And ideally you'll want to be completely finished with your watercolors or colored pencils before you start the marker. But I'm just going to show you the step real quick. Okay? So what you can do is you can come in and accent certain parts of your picture with your marker. So let's say you want certain lines to stand out. You can do that and accent. You can even do this on the colored pencils too. It'll work. Okay. So that's one thing that you can do with the markers when you're done. The second thing is you can come in and add some more patterns. So let's say you didn't feel like you had enough patterns and you wanted more lines in your waves. You could actually come in and do that. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to go, maybe I can accent the lines that I already have to make them more obvious. Now if you do this while yours is wet, you're going to have a little bit of bleeding like I am. If you wait till it's dry, you won't have any bleeding. So maybe you can even think about whether or not you like the bleeding or not. Okay. So you can accent with repetition of the line you have, or you could add new lines. So I could come in and I could make some swirls inside this wave. Okay, so those are just some ideas for what you're going to be doing with your wave project for the next few steps. And if you have any questions, let me know, but this is kind of the idea. I'm going to work on mine some more, and then you guys will be able to see it when it's finished. Alright, so I have finished my picture. I did mostly watercolor. I do have some areas where I've done colored pencil, and then I have a lot of areas where I actually did colored pencil and then watercolor on top, which I really like that effect. It kind of gives some variety. The colored pencil rejects some of the watercolor, and that makes it brighter. And then there's also some areas where the watercolor has kind of gotten into the spaces that the colored pencil didn't fill, so it makes the area look nicer. So that's what you guys are going to do. And then when this is dry, I'll come back and show you guys how to do the marker details on top. Alright, so once your picture is dry, you can start adding the details with markers. So just to revisit that a little bit, there's two different things that you can do. You can use your markers to go over your Sharpie lines and kind of make those brighter and stand out some more, or on the edges of them, kind of like I'm doing now. I'm not going right on top, I'm just kind of emphasizing them by going next to them. So that is one thing you can do, and then you can kind of see I'm trying to use colors that are very similar, so it kind of doesn't stand out too much. It just emphasizes the lines, but it doesn't distract from the picture. Okay, so that is one thing that you can do. Now, if you don't let your picture dry enough, you are going to have some bleeding, so don't forget that. If you don't want your markers to bleed and you want nice, clean, precise lines, that has to be really, really dry. Mine is only semi-dry, so I might get some bleeding, but that's okay with me. I want to be able to show you guys what to do. Okay? So that's an example of tracing next to the lines. The other thing that I told you guys you can do is you can add patterns into it. So I kind of did that here a little bit when it was really wet, so you can see it blends in quite a bit. If I wait till it's drier, I can make my patterns and lines and they'll stand out more, and because they're not going to blend in as much, they're not going to bleed into the watercolors themselves. So keep that in mind when you're deciding what you want to do. Are you going to let your picture dry all the way before you get your markers started or not? That also may be decided by how much time you have. So if you take a lot longer and you want your paper to dry, you may have to take it home to finish instead of finishing it in class. Otherwise, you may be drawing on it when it's slightly wet. You can do both things. So like right here, I have added the patterns, and then I've also started going over the lines. Now here you can see I'm using a color that's different from the colors that I originally painted with. I had blue greens that I was painting with, and this is a very dark purplish marker. So the lines are standing out quite a bit compared to what I did here. And that's just kind of your choice about what you want to do and how you want your picture to look. So lots of ways to make some creative choices here on what your picture is going to look like. So that's really fun, hopefully, for you. I'm just going to finish tracing all of my similar waves with this color. Okay, so there you go. And that's just what you're going to do. So I'm going to finish this up and then show you guys my final picture when it's completely done. And then you guys can get to work. Alright guys, so I have finished tracing everything that I want in marker. I decided I only wanted to trace the waves and not the sky, because I want the waves to stand out more than the sky, since they're in the foreground. But you guys can make your own choices about where you want to use the marker to accentuate your picture, whether you're going to outline on top of the Sharpie, whether you're going to add patterns, where you're going to use them. So lots of choices again on what you're doing with your project. As long as you have waves in motion, that's the focus, and then all these other things are creative choices that you're making as the artist. I can't wait to see your work, and I hope you guys have fun doing this project.